Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
If you're a parent, I know you're going to totally agree with what I say, but being a parent isn't easy. It's just not. There's so much going on. There's so much mental capacity you have to be a parent. You're being pulled in all different directions. So we're going to talk about working parents and being stressed. And to help us along with that, Tom Marino, he's a success strategy coach, joins us once again. Hey, Tom, how are you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you on this beautiful day?
I'm stressed out.
All right. Well, listen, join the club. Join the club. Join the other 66% of parents who are working parents that are stressed out or burnt out. Yeah. I mean, I read a study recently that 66% of parents that are working parents are burnt out. And that number changes after 2 or 3 kids are involved, and then changes again when there's 6 or more kids involved, right? So that level of stress changes by obviously the number of children that you have. But, you know, that burnout and being a working parent is not easy. And so many of us are working parents out there.
I had the text to prove it, and came in, 12 minutes ago, right here from my daughter. And she's like, what time are you going to be home today? Can we go to the beach on Sunday? I want to get my nails done, but I don't have money. It's just like, yes, this is what I'm dealing with. Like everybody else, every other working parent is dealing with.
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Parenting is a full-time 24/7 job, and it's catering to the needs of our children, and it's very hard for us to cater to our own needs at those points, right? When we're constantly giving over, and, you know, people are, you know, just in a place right now where, too, a lot of what's going on in our world is just stressing everybody out. I mean, it's insane. It's totally insane. The amount of, I was reading an article about depression and anxiety post-COVID, and there was like a 39% more likelihood within the year post-COVID, if you had COVID, to develop depression. And it was like 38% anxiety. I mean, these are staggering numbers. I mean, we've been through such a difficult time. And, you know, I think one of the biggest stressors that many of us went through, having school-age children during the pandemic, was the whole homeschooling thing, and having, you know, until technology was available, until the teachers got their stuff together and figured it out and they were able to do school. But that was such a stressful period for so many of us that I still don't think we've recovered fully from that. And that was almost 2 years ago when that first happened. But, you know, to hear that school was going to be canceled from March until the end of the year, that was like, whoa. You know, and that was a big wake-up call. And that, I think, and having to all hold down jobs while that was happening made it very difficult for all of us. And I think that's why we're seeing those higher rates of burnout, those higher rates of depression and anxiety amongst working parents.
Can we talk about guilt and being a parent? Because it seems like it's so much more now than what I thought it may have been, you know, let's say 10 years ago.
You know, it's like you're reading my mind, Steve. You know, one of the things that I said in this article that I just had published on Zen Mama, which is 4 strategies to overcoming burnout for the working parent, it was, when we're taking inventory of our stress, we need to know what our stressors are, right? And guilt is one of those stressors, right? Like, my son plays baseball. I don't like to miss a game. I don't like to not be available for a game, but during the summer, he has games at 3:45, and it's near impossible with work and everything else to get to that game at that time. You know, some business owners can integrate it into their life, and, you know, you can make it work, but you still have that guilt. But I think you have to excuse yourself of that guilt. You have to really say, okay, I can't be at every one, but I'm going to make a commitment to be at the majority of the games, right? It's almost like you got to set the bar at not 100%, but like maybe set the bar at 75%, right? As long as one of you are there, you know, one parent, as long as one parent is present, you could feel less guilty about it, right? Because you're going to take your turn. Your turn's going to happen. And you've got to explain that to your children. You have to explain you're not going to tell them what's stressing you out. You're not going to tell them that the guilt is making you feel bad, but you've got to get that mindset of, I'm going to be there for 75% of your games. I hope you understand that daddy has to work or mommy has to work, and we'll be there when we can be there, and we're going to do our best to be there. But please don't be disappointed if we're not there for one game or two, right? It's laying the expectation
Mm-hmm.
that
I think
changes
that
that
is,
guilt.
I agree with you. I think that is I don't want to call it a guilt release, because you're trying to do as much as you can, but as long as your kids know what to expect,
Yep.
Worst thing would be, 3:45, your son goes to play. Where is everybody? Mom and dad aren't here.
Right.
At least if one is there, you plan it out that way. So
Exactly.
it can be, yeah.
It's all about planning. And I think that's one of the things that becomes very, very difficult for the working parent, because you don't always have the time to think about those things. You don't have the time. Like we all fall into this. Like, we have a cabana down at the beach for the summer, right? And last weekend we was very unpredictable because my son had a tournament. We didn't know when we would be playing or whatever. And came to Sunday and we had the time, and the kids were bored down there. And I said to my wife, I said, we failed to plan to make them busy while we're here. We failed to do that. And I think that's something that we have to all work towards, is better planning around what we're doing. And I think that's where we have to, I tell people all the time, get your calendars aligned, make one master calendar that everything sits on. It's so great to have things like Google Calendar and Outlook and all these calendar apps that you can utilize as a family to help alleviate some of that lack of planning that occurs, that then turns into, my kids are bored, they don't want to be here, they don't get that this is a luxury and all of those things. But it's a matter of, you got to plan well as in order to do well.
Yeah. And I'll bet, once again, we go back to the guilt. Now you felt guilt. We're here.
Right.
We're going to have a great time. I'm going to relax. I'm looking at the, the sound or whatever, the ocean, whatever it might be. And then, no, they're bored. Oh,
Yep.
now I feel guilty. They have nothing to do.
Right. And you know what? And that's also a good moment to teach them that you're going to come across being bored in your life. There's going to be moments of boredom. You have to learn how to push through those.
Yeah.
And you have to learn what to do, and see when you're bored, it's a time to reflect and do stuff for yourself. And it's time to maybe pick up something that you haven't picked up in a while, or do something different than you've never, and try something new. And I think we have to give people those alternatives. But that guilt and that lack of planning, those are stressors for a lot of us as working parents. A friend of mine always says, as a business owner, you have to integrate with your family and your business. You have to find the ways to work on your business that are outside of your family time, right? And when you go to make your calendar for the week, make sure you're putting down in this order: self, family, and then the work, right? Because if you build, and as a business owner, you have some luxury that you can build your schedule in a very flexible way. But for the working parent, it's not always that easy. So one of the strategies I suggest is, more and more companies are now open to flexible scheduling. They're open to remote work, right? A lot of companies are still 60% remote, 40% on site. There are a lot of things are still in that realm. And because of the Great Resignation, more companies are looking to offer that flex time. And that's where, whether a business owner or working parent in a corporate job or job, you have to look for those opportunities for flexible scheduling. But you have to try to plan, what are you doing for yourself? What are you doing with your family? And then how do you get your work done in the process?
I totally agree. The biggest challenge is, that's work.
Exactly.
You have to carve out time for that, to think. Like in your situation with the cabana and the beach, that's more work. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's kind of rhetorical, but it's like, oh, we got to think ahead of time what we can bring so the kids are occupied and they're happy and everything's good, so we can be happy.
Right.
Or even if you're just trying to be creative, depending on how old your kids are, why don't you guys go look for hermit crabs. They're all scurrying about. Here's a bucket. Go catch a bunch, play with them, and let them go.
And that is a great, like that's a great way. But sometimes you don't think like that because
No.
you're so blocked yourself, right? You're so blocked yourself, you can't even think straight because all you wanted to do was come down to the beach to relax and just decompress
And do nothing.
and do nothing.
Yeah.
But kids don't get to do nothing, right?
Yep.
I always teach my kids about vacation. I always say to them, our trips to Jamaica are vacation. Trips to Disney World and to all these other places where you're a tourist are not vacation because you come home more tired than when you went.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how you decide to build and teach your children what is a time for rest versus what is a time for exploration versus what is a time for tourism, what is a time for doing something that's different, right? That's what you got to teach your kids. But you've got to create that flexibility for them too. You have to help your kids to be flexible.
Yeah. It's funny. We're talking about this and I got a text from a really good friend and she went to a specialty store to get bras and a bathing suit or maybe two. And she went there the other day, ran out of time. She had to pick the kids up at camp. She went back there again the following day and she brought the kids with her. And then I get a text today. We just, we chat. She's really, really cool. And she said, yeah, I didn't get everything I needed. I'm like, why would you not get it at that store? They have everything. I mean, that's what they specialize in.
Right.
She said, I couldn't with the kids. So it could be the third trip back.
Right.
But it is what it is. And her kids are 6 and 10.
Right. And that's, again, where planning necessary. If you're going to, I know when we go food shopping, it's better for my wife to go by herself. It's better for me maybe to come with her to help. Like I go over to the deli counter and she's shopping and she's getting everything and we tag team, right? And that's what comes down to leveraging resources, right? Mm-hmm. Leveraging resources is really important. Like if you have a partner and you have someone you could do it with, you can split up the task and you'll get it done. Or you need to go in with a plan of attack, right? Carpooling is such a resource leveraging tool of the preteen and the teenage era, because I feel like I'm Tom the Uber driver lately with my kids' social lives, right? And their activities and everything they're doing. And you've got to learn how to leverage your resources and partner with other parents and do things like carpooling and organize who's taking whom with. But again, that all requires planning, and that is all stressful.
Yes.
Planning it is stressful. And it's hard to, and listen, we've got to acknowledge that there is those things that are stressful about doing carpooling and making plans, who's picking up my son did a 3-day catching camp. We had 3 families that all 3 boys were going to this catching camp. We all shared responsibility. Who drove when, who did this, who did that. But planning it is stressful, and that is a stressor. But if you are looking at it from the standpoint of, all right, this has to happen, and here's how I'm going to leverage the people in my life. You got to be able to ask for help, right? That's the other thing. So if you're a parent listening to this right now, stop trying to do it all yourself and ask for help. Ask for help. If somebody offers help, take the help. Mm-hmm. Because you're burning out trying to do it all. And that's the point. I mean, 66% of working parents are burnt out. I think that's probably even higher. I think that statistic is probably wrong.
I agree.
But, because people don't want to always admit they're burnt out. They want to feel like they're super people and they can do anything. And they don't realize that they're burning out. But that's the thing. Like, you've got to be honest with yourself and be truthful. And I think that's the other part of planning, is speaking your truth around what you want to do with your free time. And that's why you should always schedule your time for you first. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. You can find 30 minutes to 60 minutes for yourself. You've got to do it.
And it can be 30 minutes of doing nothing.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Exactly. And that is totally fine. But when we don't take that time, for the self-care, which is essential to any situation that's stressful, it's like you're pulling out, like you got to think of self-care as an insurance policy. Okay. When you get in a car accident, what happens? Your insurance will pay for that, but you have a deductible, right? And depending on how many accidents you get in, maybe your premium goes up, right? Well, when you have a self-care regimen, where you have a self-care policy, when you have those stressful times, you're paying your deductible. And your premium is going to go up if that self-care is not enough for you. And you need to put more into your self-care. But you got to be able to recognize that. You got to be able to pull yourself in those moments where you're like, I'm stressed, but I have a self-care regimen. What can I do right now? And sometimes it's just breathing.
Yep.
Taking those 4 very intentional deep breaths where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4, and you let it go over 4 seconds. And that's part of self-care in those moments.
Let the guilt go.
Let it go.
That so many of us feel guilty that we take that time. I can speak freely because I did.
Right. And that's where we're hard on ourselves. Right.
It was, I made a mistake, big mistake. Did not realize how important that was. And I still don't take the amount of time that I should. I just don't. And I need to carve that in. But sometimes I do feel guilty. Like, I got to do that. I could be doing this. I could be doing that. No. Sometimes now I'll even add extra time. Like if I'm going to meet somebody at 7 p.m., I'll get there maybe at like 6:40 just to do nothing.
Absolutely. You've got to do that. You've got to give yourself that time when you can steal that time, right? It's stealing the time. But the underlying thing with guilt is judgment, right? You think you're a bad parent if you're not doing something for your kids and you're taking time for yourself.
But it's all self-imposed.
Exactly.
It's not, people aren't judging you. Maybe some of us think that maybe we are being a little, we're judging us.
We're judging ourselves. We're judging ourselves over it. And what we have to remember is if we don't take the time to refresh our mind, body, and soul, we don't take that 30 minutes, we don't take that time, we are not going to be good parents. We are not going to be the best version of ourselves for our kids. So the heck with that judgment. Change the perspective on it. Pointing it in a new direction is necessary. Take the moments that you need for you, because if you don't, you're not going to be the best parent.
And look at it this way. I know it's kind of radical when you think about this, but if you don't take that time, you're harming yourself. You're actually hurting yourself. It's like, I just had a conversation with somebody about food, and they said, yeah, well, food is medicine. And when you think of it that way, you might not grab for those, junky chips or stuff like that. Not that that's a bad thing. Every once in a while, you need to take the time to, treat yourself too. But if you think of it as medicine, well, think of it that way, that taking the time for yourself is medicine. You need that.
That is the prescription for your mental health, for your well-being, for your goals as a parent.
Sure.
You need that time for you. But that's the other thing. It really brings up to the idea of setting that no boundary. You have to be able to say no. You have to be able to say no to things and not take on more than what you can. Because if you keep saying yes to everything, you wind up overwhelmed, even more stressed out. Like I said yes to something that I should not have said yes to the other day. And now it's weighing on me. And now I'm like, great. I just followed my own no boundary and destroyed it. I didn't follow it. I destroyed it. But you managed through it and go, okay, you try to make the best of the situation, but you've got to learn from this experience and say, I'm not going to do that next time. I'm going to stay firm.
Tom, don't you hate that feeling? Like when you said yes to somebody and it should have been a no, and it just weighs on you. It's like that weight on your neck. And it's like, well, like I'll get it done, but I really should have, because I could be doing this, and it's more important. It's a horrible feeling.
And don't be afraid to go back to that person and say, listen, in the moment, I thought I could do it. After some self-reflection, I'm very sorry, but I'm not going to be able to, because you may disappoint that person. But the greater thing is you can't disappoint yourself. disappointing yourself would be continuing with something that you shouldn't be doing, that you shouldn't be doing. And that's where you have to honor yourself, right? If we're people pleasers, it's really hard for us to honor ourselves. And that's where the guilt steps in. But you need to recognize that people pleasing that you're doing is more harmful to you than it is to anybody else. They'll find somebody else to do it. Let them figure that out. That's their thing to figure out. That's not necessarily your thing to figure out for them. Always know what role you play.
Do you think, Tom, that a lot of us, and by the way, we're talking with success strategy coach Tom Marino. You can find him at tommarino.com. Do you find that a lot of us don't put up the boundaries, keep moving, don't take the time for ourselves because we're really afraid to confront ourselves?
Yeah, I always say that's the biggest fear. We'll procrastinate on anything that we need to do for ourselves to do something for somebody else. We look for the easy button. Easy is always easy because anything other than easy is a struggle, right? And that's what fear is really based in. Fear is based in the fear of the struggle, not the fear of what's easy. What's easy but that just compounds the issue even further. And fear is typically the underlying reason for why we don't say no, is because we don't want to let our kids down. We don't want to let other people down, right? When your kid wants something and they want to do something, you have to recognize that they're children, and in a moment, it could be very fleeting, that moment, and their attention can change to something else very quickly. And you have to take advantage of that sometimes and say, no, we're not going to do that right now. Maybe we'll do that another time and we'll make a plan for that, right? Because you want to teach your kids good habits too. You want to teach them that we need to plan for things like that, right? And that's what I was, just setting up boundaries. I was talking to someone the other night who is in a bit of a tiff with his own parents because his parents bought his kids some toys that he specifically said not to buy. And they were overstepping, right? And they had given the kids the toys at his parents' house. And I said, you can change how you respond to that by how you teach your kids to respond to that. You have to be able to say to your kids, when we go out somewhere, if someone gives you a gift, take this and say, thank you so much for the gift. Open the gift, be happy with the gift for the person that's given it to you. But the rule is you can't play with it until you come home. Because what will happen is if you really don't want your kid to have that toy, the chances of them remembering that they even got the toy are much better if you delay when they play with it, right? So you've got to learn how to manage the situation, right? And not let that kind of overstepping get in your way. And that's what we have to be very careful when it comes to stress as parents is don't consume the things that we shouldn't be consuming. Find the solutions and the answers to the things that counteract. Set up the boundaries that you need for your kids. And then things will go differently.
I don't know the parameters surrounding the toy, but would a solution be also that that's the toy for grandma and grandpa's house, and when you're there, you can play with it there?
Absolutely. That would be another great option and another great solution. But those moments are stressful. Those things add to our stress. And that was the point. I was like, you don't have to make this stressful. What you have to do is counteract that stressor. You've got to find the thing that counteracts, and setting the expectations with your children around what to do will change that situation for you. So it's eliminating the stressor. It's finding a way around the stressor in that moment.
What I'm learning here today, Tom, and we have about a minute left, is the one word that keeps going around to help working parents who are stressed or burned out: expectations. Because if you set the expectations with your kids, they know what to expect, when you're going to be available, how it's going to go. Expectations of yourself, maybe expectations within your partner. I think it eliminates a lot of the stress that
it does
around.
It's very clear. I was just talking to a client, and he's going to be taking over his father's company, and the brother's going to be a different partner. He's not going to be an equal partner. And I said, well, what do you need to run the business? What do you need to put out there as expectation for everybody else so that you could be successful? Because right now he's stressed because he doesn't know what those expectations are.
Yep.
So find the expectation.
Well, Every time we talk, I expect we learn a lot, and we do.
We do.
The website is tommarino.com, and you're available if anybody even has a question, even if you're a parent,
Absolutely.
trying to move life forward and dealing with some stress, you can, I'm sure, help somebody out of the gate with that.
Absolutely. And listen, you can text me at 516-588-0750. That's 516-588-0750. Just send me a text. If you have a question, if your phone is closer to you than going to my website, just text me there and I will answer your question.
Yep. Always great talking with you, Tom.
Thanks, Steve. It's great being here with you.
You too. And let's not be stressed out.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's try to be stress-free this weekend.
Yeah. Maybe for an hour. I'll take an hour if we could do that.
Awesome. That's a great goal.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.